It is 3 and Out on this Tuesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben here with you, and we are just loaded for bear here on a Tuesday. So much to get to over the course of the next 3 hours. Chris Hummer, 247 Sports, going to join us. We're talking name, image, likeness, and the transfer portal. Obviously, we're seeing, even before name, image, likeness, we saw an explosion in the transfer portal, but are we seeing potential transfers now in anticipation of name, image, and likeness coming to fruition? We'll talk to Chris Hummer about that coming up in about 15 minutes. Also, we will chat with McLean Baxley, who was at State Farm Arena last night for the Hawks to come back and beat the Philadelphia 76ers, even up that series. He'll join us in hour number 2. Rich Stiles, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show, will join us in hour number 2. It's U.S. Open week, so another major championship already. A little saltiness out there between Bryson DeChambeau and Brooks Koepka. We'll get to that. We'll have we'll do a little draft ahead of the U.S. Open. We'll see who has the best luck, if you will. I know Christian and Rich tied in the Masters draft. We'll do it for the U.S. Open, see who can come out on top. And in the final hour, Ross Dellinger, Sports Illustrated, will join us. He's kind of been the preeminent voice, at least covering it. I won't say voice. He's been the guy that's at the front covering this thing in regards to name, image, and likeness. And as we stand today, BJ and Ben, we're 15 days away from turning over a month, which in states like Georgia means, unless something else is said, you're opening up for name, image, likeness in 2 weeks. So we will talk to Ross about that coming up in the final hour of the program. And does he actually expect the federal government to do something in 2 weeks? I know that's asking a lot sometimes when you're trying to get legislation passed. We shall see. So he'll join us coming up in the final hour of the program. But so much to unravel and get to, BJ and Ben, including BJ, you and I kind of talked yesterday. Was it kind of the last stand for the Hawks? Did they need to win that one? You go down 3-1. It's looking pretty grim against the 76ers. But for about 3 quarters, it was looking pretty grim for the Atlanta Hawks, and they rallied, came back, and got a 3-point victory. Trae Young played great down the stretch. Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, well, not so much for the 76ers. Embiid 0 for 12. Ben Simmons only took 1 shot, and during the key stretch there at the end of the game, he was not playing, partly because he can't make a shot, and they didn't trust him to hit free throws. So now that it's tied up, does your thinking change at all, or is it just, hey, the Hawks got back to even, and let's go from there?
I think if you're the Hawks, I don't think you worry about the national narrative or, what do the odds say or what might be. Just keep playing and having fun and kind of let the pressure build around Philadelphia. And I think you saw that manifest itself when the Hawks came out in the second half and really started to settle in. First off, we've all said during this series, defense has got to set the tone. In the second half, Atlanta held Philadelphia to 38 points. 18 points in the fourth quarter, 20 points in the third quarter, 38 points. That is a remarkable defensive effort. So credit the Hawks for getting it done on that end of the floor. And what's interesting is if you look at the box score, and yes, we all know the 76ers did not finish great. But if you look at the box score, Philly was better just shooting overall. They were better from 3. They had more rebounds, but Atlanta was better down the stretch. And I thought this was just an amazing stat. And I don't know if either of you guys have ever heard of a performance like this in terms of taking care of the basketball. The Atlanta Hawks had 4 turnovers the whole game. 4. Like if you have less than 4 in a quarter, that's a pretty decent quarter. So not only did Trae Young have 25 points, not only did he have 18 assists, he and the rest of the guards and everybody on the floor took great care of the basketball. And I think when you talk about a defensive effort where you were able to slow down Embiid and really hold the 76ers to very modest production, and then you yourself were taking care of the basketball and being efficient with ball movement, you made the free throws down the stretch. Of course, the big free throws from Trae Young, defensive stops down the stretch. I know a lot of people will make this about what Philadelphia did not do. And okay, that's part of it. But Atlanta did not make mistakes. They were elite defensively in the second half, and they were the better team in the final moments. And people can speculate. You can say whatever. This series is tied.
Nate McMillan didn't even know that Trae Young had a hurt shoulder. Trae Young comes out, he takes off his shooting jacket, and he has tape on his shoulder. Nate McMillan didn't even know about it. Nate McMillan said he looks at Trae. Trae kind of gave him the wink, said, look, man, I'm fine, man, let's go. Trae Young did not have a really, really good game overall. Did not have a good first half, but ended up making shots down the stretch. What you like the most about Atlanta is they are never say die team. We keep on acting. This isn't the first round of the playoffs. This is the second round. We understand. When's the last time Atlanta Hawks been the favorite? Was Atlanta the favorites when they had the best record in the East? No. So this is a usual thing when you talk about the Atlanta Hawks franchise. Trae Young is out there. He's one of the walking wounded. I know it's going to be about Joel Embiid and the torn cartilage in his knee, and Ben Simmons can't hit free throws. Ben Simmons can't shoot. Ben Simmons never can hit free throws. Ben Simmons never can shoot. It just gets magnified in the playoffs. Nate McMillan is a guy that understands that his team plays better in the second half when the pressure is on them. When Atlanta won game 1 and then Philly came back and won game 2, Atlanta won game 3, Philly came back and won game. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Other way around there.
Yeah, the other way around. You know what I mean? I think what happens is, BJ, I'm not here to talk about what the 76ers didn't do. They lost. And if this were the other way around, the 76ers would be getting all the credit. Joel Embiid fought through this. He's understanding, being one of the best, talents in the NBA. No, this Atlanta team is dangerous because what I be seeing bigger than the points, Trae double-digit assists. I mean, Clint Capella, double-digit rebounds. These dudes are getting it done. I mean, I can handle 10 points if you give me 15 rebounds. I can handle 20-some points from Trae if you're giving me double-digit assists, which means if I'm not getting it done, I'm providing opportunities for my teammates to get it done. All the pressure, once again, is back on Philly because if it goes 7, which it probably will, that puts all the pressure on the 76ers team because if Joel Embiid is out there, I don't want to hear it. You haven't been 100% since they said it's a boy. I mean, you've been scratching and clawing ever since. You was 100% in the womb. So once you got exposed to this air, breathing all these different things, it's been a fight ever since. But I give a lot of credit to Atlanta because Trae Young just proved that he don't have to have his best game, BJ and Kevin, and they still won. Most of the time, if your superstar don't play well, it doesn't bode well for your squad. But he's still making it happen on the offensive side, getting assists. And dare I say, his role players are more than going. Bogdanovich and those guys, Clint Capella, they're still going out there and making it happen. And even Collins is still give you some key minutes. So yeah, I think Atlanta is showing they can scratch and claw and. We'll see what happens in Game 5, but thus far, this has been one of the more compelling series, in the second round.
And Kevin, let's say what it is. I mean, Trae Young has been extraordinary, and I know for the early part of his career, the natural talking points were we got to compare everything he does to Luka, right? Because of the trade and the draft and all like that. Well, I think we're past that. Both guys are fantastic players, are great players. But you look at what Trae Young has done, leading a team that at the beginning of the year, nobody was talking about. First couple of weeks of the year, nobody was talking about. Coaching change, everybody kind of moved on from the Hawks. And now Trae Young has become the catalyst for a team that quite honestly could be in the Eastern Conference Finals. Couple of wins away from being in the Eastern Conference Finals. And this is not a superstar team. This is not a, 3, 4, 5 all-stars, bona fide all-stars every year on the roster type team. Trae Young, Ben, you mentioned it. He was not great offensively for a good portion of last night. You know how he made up for it? He had 18 assists. 18. He made basically the game sealing free throws at the end of the game. He took care of the basketball to the point where the Hawks almost didn't even have a turnover. 4 turnovers in the entire game with the pressure and the spotlight and the intensity of a second round playoff matchup. Trae Young is exciting. We've known that, when he first came out of Oklahoma, the long threes and the penetration and the distribution of the basketball. But this young man is developing into a superstar. This has been an extraordinary postseason for Trae Young, and it's been a joy to watch.
Well, it's where legacies get made, obviously, in sports. You can be a great player in the regular season, but you kind of get that national profile for what you do in the postseason. I think people wonder about Mike Trout as a great example, BJ and Ben. It's he might be the best player in all of baseball, but he's never been in the postseason but one time. And so you've not really had a chance for the national audience at large to really soak in how good Mike Trout is. Like Angels fans, guys on the West Coast get to see him a lot. But I think if you're looking at the Hawks team where, you hear Steve Holman, voice of the Hawks, go around saying, look, Stephen A. Smith, he doesn't know who Kevin Huerter is. Had to tell him who he was. It's like You don't know these guys until they show out in the playoffs. Trae Young is a good player. People in Atlanta know Trae Young. People in the Eastern Conference that see the Hawks may know a little bit about Trae Young, but the media and the basketball world at large probably said, he's that guy from Oklahoma, right? Now they're saying more. Why? Because they're getting a chance to see him do it in the postseason, do it when it matters, do it in crunch time, and lead his team. And I think that is what a lot of the concerns were when he came out of Oklahoma. Yeah, he can shoot. Yeah, he can put points on the board. Can he be a guy that leads his team in all phases? I don't just mean statistically, but can he be a guy that leads his team and get it done in a big stage? And I think you've really seen him under Nate McMillan develop into that, and you're seeing that has been said on the big stage where first half, it wasn't a lot to write home about offensively for Trae, but he finishes with 25, 18 assists, and the second half was a completely different ball player. And I think you see that from guys who are great, right? They still figure it out. LeBron James could have a horrible first half. Guess what? He's going to close. Michael Jordan, he may not have a great first half. He's going to close. Kobe Bryant, going to close the deal when he was there. Shaq, going to close. That's what great players do. Give me the ball. I've been garbage for 3 quarters. Give me the ball now, though, and watch what happens. And I think Trae Young's taking over that role for the Hawks here in the postseason.
I mean, 18 assists. 18 assists is a great game in the regular season. Let alone, forget. And once you say 18 assists, I look at it like this. Anything you give me outside of that is a bonus. That means I'm creating opportunities for 18 of my teammates. He only hit like 8 shots on 26, 8 or 26. But number one, every team needs to know who the superstar is. You need to defer to the superstar. I don't have any animosity towards the superstar. Number two, what has been a knock on a guy like Carmelo Anthony? Great player, never made his teammates better. Top 10 in scoring, never made his teammates. James Harden, BJ, never made his teammates better. So superstardom to me is more than just, are you going to light up the box score? So I think that Trae Young, one, showed that I cannot have a good game. I still get my teammates involved, and my teammates still expect me to take the game-winning shot. That is a sign. So just looking at it on paper without knowing who the superstars are, Atlanta looks like the better team. They don't got the bigger names, which Ben Simmons at this point is a big name. I don't know if he's a big-time player. He's a big name. But if your big-time players are, can only, or a liability at the end of the game, you can't call yourself that big-time. So I just think that I like what this team is doing. Collins, 12, 13. These dudes are getting it done. Whatever Nate McMillan told them, they buying into their roles. And whenever you got a superstar and a bunch of role players that embrace it, they're going to be hard to beat. Because I know it's supposed to be about them boys from the Nets. Brooklyn, them boys from Milwaukee might have something to say about that too.
Yeah, going to be a great couple of games here coming up for Atlanta and the 76ers. 18 assists, career high for Trae Young anytime in regular season, postseason. Got a career high in assists last night. We'll come back, switch a little gears. Chris Hummer, 247 Sports, going to join us. We'll talk about name, image, likeness and how it relates to the transfer portal. Are we seeing guys transfer potentially due to name, image, likeness? 19 states have laws coming up. Obviously, other ones do not at this point. Is that affecting where guys are thinking about moving in that transfer portal? We'll get to that next. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Back 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Will hear from Chris Hummer, 247 Sports, in about 15 minutes. We'll talk about name, image, likeness, and the transfer portal as it relates to that here in the early stages of the college football offseason. But you look ahead to August, obviously September. We're talking about who are the contenders. Which contender do you think has the easiest path to the college football playoff? I'm talking about right now the 4 teams as we see it, and might that in and of itself make a case for why we're going to 12 teams in some respects. But who do you think has the easiest route right now in 2021?
To the question about is this why we're expanding first? Possibly to a certain extent, because you have such a wide-ranging set of schedules. And I understand strength of schedule is somewhat perception, especially in the preseason, because we don't know how some of these teams are going to develop or play, or are they going to exceed expectations, whatever. But yeah, I think, Kevin, that's a part of it, because when you're trying to narrow it down to 4 slots, you know, the wide-ranging strength of schedules can be especially difficult. But I think most people, if you were to ask this question just out loud, would probably say Clemson, because the ACC, especially the ACC Atlantic, has a lot of questions. I mean, you look at the ACC Atlantic, I think North Carolina State is going to be really good, but probably that means maybe top 20, top 25. I don't think they're projected to be top 10 good. But after NC State, man, I mean, how do you know what to expect from Florida State? Louisville's in transition. Wake Forest is in a little bit of a transition. Syracuse is in transition. Boston College could be pretty good, but in terms of being pretty good and competing with Clemson, those are different things. But Clemson, keep in mind, as Georgia fans know, you do have that opener, and that's a top 5 opener. I think South Carolina at the end of the year is hard to project, but they're probably rebuilding. But that Georgia game is really tough. And I will say this, there's at least the chance, we don't know, but the chance that Clemson could meet up with a top 10 North Carolina or Miami, who they do not play in the regular season, in the ACC championship game. I think on paper it might be Oklahoma. Oklahoma, when you look at their schedule on paper, yeah, of course you have some tough challenges. You play Texas in the Cotton Bowl every year. Texas is kind of fringe top 25 in a lot of these early polls. We'll see how good TCU is. We'll see how good Oklahoma State is. We'll see how good Baylor is. But you really don't have that showcase non-conference game. I think when you look at their out-of-conference schedule, it's Tulane, Western Carolina, and that's what you're looking at to start the year, Tulane and Western Carolina. Now, you do have Iowa State, but that game's not until November 20th. And Iowa State's a preseason top 10 type team. But again, I think they're still looking to get to that next level. Lost to Louisiana, as we mentioned yesterday, by 17 a year ago. So I think on paper, it's probably Oklahoma who doesn't have that true signature showdown game like Clemson does with Georgia.
I hear you with Oklahoma. I mean, I know Ohio State gonna have supposed to have a couple big games. Of course, it's gonna be Clemson. When's the last time Clemson lost a regular season game that we can remember? I'm just saying, when you start talking about the fact that Clemson understand, because these other teams can stand to lose a game and probably still get in. Clemson can't lose no game in the ACC and still get in. I mean, because we've never seen that yet. We've seen them lose. I'm sorry, we saw them lose to Notre Dame last year in a shootout, but play Notre Dame in the ACC championship game. I just think that for me, it's going to be Clemson, because we talk about this, Kevin. Everybody that's come through Alabama that's got recruited by Nick Saban has won the SEC championship, won a national championship. Dabo Swinney wins the ACC every year now. Like they're gonna win the ACC, and unless Ian Book got another year eligibility, because he's been there like 30 years. He's no longer at Notre Dame, right? Because if he is, that's the only chance Notre Dame got a shot of even beating Clemson, BJ. And I know you're going to talk about the North Carolina with Sam Howell, or I guess they'll meet them in the AC championship game. I just think that for me, it's going to be Clemson, because Clemson is miles and miles ahead of the rest of that conference. Ohio State can still be beat. They'll lose to a team that's not as good. They lose one every year. The thing about Oklahoma, do they not run out of gas? Spencer Rattler and those guys are obviously going to be picked favorites in every team that they're going to play this year, but they'll lose to Kansas State or something crazy in a shootout. For me, it's going to be Clemson because Clemson's going to win the ACC, running away with it. And we 2 years away from them having that do style point wins to not beat the brakes off a team out of conference that might, end up winning their conference and look good at the end. So for me, I think Oklahoma and Ohio State are definitely, got easier routes, but it doesn't get much easier right now than Clemson if they only gonna meet Sam Howell and the North Carolina boys, in Charlotte.
I think Abby said easiest path could be, a relative thing. I just look at Clemson and say, to me, they have the easiest path because it seems to me they know if they win week one, they're probably going to make it, right?
Hold on a second. Because I got to ask both of y'all this because Clemson at least opens the season with a top 5 team. Like, I think if you're looking at Oklahoma, and again, Oklahoma does have Iowa State. I'm not trying to write that off, but I think if you're comparing Iowa State and Georgia, I think Georgia is clearly on another level than Iowa State at this point. And then Clemson potentially in the ACC championship game could have a top 10 North Carolina with a number 1 overall pick, maybe at quarterback and Sam Howell. And again, I do think the schedule is easy, especially after you get past Georgia. But what is it about that Oklahoma schedule, I guess, that stands out to y'all in comparison to Clemson? Because I don't see an obstacle like Georgia there.
Iowa State is obviously the easy answer to that, BJ. But, we don't know how good Texas is going to be. They're going to run the football. They do got Steve Sarkisian. They're going to be a much better offense. I don't know that good. Texas usually recruits well in the state of Texas. They run the state of Texas. They are the flagship university in that state. Is Baylor going to be better this year? TCU. I know we give Oklahoma the benefit of the doubt because of who they are, but they play good enough team. You know how these games are going to be, BJ. 58, 56, 49 to 44. These games are not really based on which defense can make a stop in crunch time. Guys are going to throw the ball a lot, which means, defenses are going to be tired, could have turnovers. So I don't give Oklahoma an easier trick, even though they bring back one of the most high-powered offenses you're going to see, led by Spencer Rattler. But I do think that their conference is better top to bottom. And I go back to the bottom feeders of every single conference. Their bottom feeders are better than some other conferences' bottom feeders, which means that there are no gimme wins. They're in the Big 12. And like I said, we just chop it up that Oklahoma's going to beat Texas. Well, Sarkisian, he knows to stay out that hot seat, he's going to have to do something that Texas isn't known for doing lately, and that's beat Oklahoma. But because Texas and Iowa State's supposed to be a team picked to do some great things this year with the rest of that schedule, like Baylor, like Oklahoma State, anything can happen. So I don't think Oklahoma's is as easy as we chopping it up to be.
Yeah, I think that's the rub for me too, BJ, as I look at Oklahoma and say they are going to have more consistently difficult games on their schedule than Clemson will. I think the ACC obviously is playing catch up to Clemson. Again, Georgia might be, and I know you're saying, well, NC State, depending on when they play, they might be the only ranked team that Clemson potentially plays. I think West Virginia has been a pretty consistent top 25 team. Iowa State's been in and out of the top 25. They finished top 10 last year. And I think you got some decent programs in Baylor and in Oklahoma State that have been consistent top 25 teams the last 4 or 5 years. So I think by and large, they'll probably see some better teams that have the chance to beat them. Outside of Georgia, there may only be one other team that, quote unquote, has the talent and the chance to knock off Clemson in the regular season. And I don't even know how good of a chance that is, if you're talking about NC State. So I think from Clemson's standpoint, I have to imagine the coaches aren't saying this, but certainly from a fan standpoint and guys looking at this team, in the back of your mind, you have to be thinking, if you beat Georgia week one, there's not a team the rest of the way that should be able to beat us. And so that right there, I think, should give you the easiest path to get into the college football playoff as it's all said and done there. We'll see. Obviously, you got to go out and play. Clemson's had their moments where they've, gotten upset and moments where they've gotten pushed to the brink by teams we didn't think were good enough to do it either. So we'll see. But on paper right now, I think Clemson, to me, I agree with Ben, probably has the easiest path. We'll come back. Chris Hummer, 247 Sports, going to join us. We'll talk name, image, likeness, and the transfer portal. How do those two things kind of correlate right now on the brink of name, image, likeness coming into being, and now the transfer portal obviously just exploding with guys looking for another place to play. We'll talk to him next. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. College football rolling along here in the off season. Obviously, it's transfer time as you get to June and July. Then August, you got to be where you're going to be as fall camps start all over the place. But certainly, transfer portal. Could we start seeing it more tied to name, image, likeness here in the not too distant future? Joining us here to talk about that and more from 247 Sports, Chris Hummer joins us here on 3 and Out. Chris, welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Hey, we appreciate you coming on. And obviously, in 2 weeks, we're expected to see name, image, likeness come on board in several states out there who have laws going in effect on July 1. This, of course, if Congress or someone doesn't supersede that. But are we seeing a lot of posturing towards states that are going to have name, image, likeness rights as these recruits hit the transfer portal, as that those are the prime destinations to go to at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of schools that are in states that do have name, image, and likeness laws are going to certainly play that up from a recruiting perspective, both with high school kids and transfer kids. But at the end of the day, it's kind of a short-term thing. Like, I think the expectation nationally is there will be some sort of federal legislation by the end of the year. So while the schools that are going first are at a pretty big advantage in the short term, like over the long term, I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference, because I want to say the expectation is, like, you never know how Congress is going to work nationally. They tend to work at their own pace, but I think the hope from a lot of administrators is there will be something in place by the fall or the end of the year, which would kind of mitigate some of the advantages there. But yeah, certainly going to be a big thing for schools, like right out of the gates, pushing that in terms of recruiting.
When you look at the transfer portal at large, how has it changed the dynamic of roster construction? I know it's impacted recruiting. I know certain schools around the country still have a couple of slots open, or maybe even have held a slot or two open. How has it changed the way coaches go about building their rosters?
Oh, I think it's completely altered the way coaches look at rosters. If you look at a program like Michigan State, like, I think they've signed 15 transfers this offseason.
$15 transfers for Michigan State. We lost Chris there. We're trying to get him back. But, yeah, we saw Texas State didn't even sign a high school kid there, BJ. So we're trying to get Chris back. We had him and lost him there. But certainly transfer portal is changing how coaches view their roster there at the national level. I think we have Chris back here. Chris, are you with us?
I am. Sorry about that. I think my cat might have stepped on my phone or something. My bad.
Chris Hummer joining us here from 247 Sports. And go ahead and finish what you were saying about teams. You mentioned Michigan State signed 15 transfers. I think Texas State didn't even sign a high school kid this year, and how that may be changing as we move forward here.
Yeah, it's completely changed roster construction. Texas State's a great example, as you said. I talked to Jake Spavital about that earlier this year. Like, he didn't set out to do it, but they had better players available from the transfer portal. They probably would have signed via high school players. So it's completely changed the way coaches look at things. I think last year we saw 500 fewer high school players signed at FBS programs, which is a pretty massive number. I don't know off the top of my head, but I think that's like on average about 4.5 kids per school. And when we talk about the scholarship crunch that's going to be coming up, because the NCAA has given super seniors an extra year and everybody in the roster an extra year, but hasn't expanded the roster cap moving past 2021. So we're going to see schools really lean heavily on the transfer portal to fill needs instead of maybe signing fringe high school guys like they had in the past. So for contenders, it's a way to fill needs. For kind of middle tier programs, it's a way to load up and kind of add talent quickly. And for kind of some of the teams at the bottom, maybe it's an opportunity to sign some high school guys you wouldn't have had the opportunity to do so in the future or in the past. So there's a lot of kind of moving pieces there.
So, Chris, I mean, with all that being said, you mentioned that 500 fewer kids out of high school signed with FBS schools. It seems to be working for the schools at large, whether they are P5, G5. I see certain I seen the Jackson State wide receiver go to Michigan. But is it working for the players in general? Because I know it didn't work out at a school A. I want to go to school B. How many of these guys go to the transfer portal and never come out?
More than you might think. I'm actually working on a story about that right now, but I think I did a study in like 2018, 2019, so the first cycle of the transfer portal. less than 50% of FBS players ended up staying in the FBS level when they entered the transfer portal. And I would imagine those numbers look significantly worse these days, given the volume of players entering. This year's seen over 1,000 more than we have in the past. So it's a pretty risky proposition. And some like formerly really elite high school players go in thinking they'll have the same level of attention they did coming out of high school. And it's a very different story. I think 2 years later, when you don't have any game film and you just have like kind of grainy practice tape, it's not quite the same thing as what you were 2 years ago when you had all the potential in the world. So it is a potentially risky thing for players for sure.
And you look at, as Ben said, the way it's put together, do you feel that it is working as currently set up? Or will the NCAA or someone step in and say, okay, maybe we need to modify the way the transfer situation is working so you don't end up with, as you said, a glut of players looking to transfer and nowhere to go?
I think the NCAA should certainly look at the scholarship cap moving forward. Not just the 85 limit, but the 25 kind of cap per cycle, which is a really limiting thing for schools. Because right now what you're having is like big transfer classes leave. So like if a school loses 10 scholarship players 2 years in to the transfer portal, they can't replace those players quickly enough with that 25 hard cap each cycle. So you're going to see roster situations where coaches take over and they're at a severe disadvantage because they're working with one hand tied behind their back in terms of scholarship numbers. I think a lot of coaches would tell you that. I've heard that complaint for years now, and it's only going to be kind of magnified with everything that's happening with kind of scholarship limits right now. So I think the NCAA does need to take a hard look at that.
We've seen a number of programs bring in high-profile guys through the transfer portal, including the Georgia Bulldogs. Obviously, a very good roster to begin with, but with some of the guys they've added, do you think Georgia, maybe it's gone up a notch in terms of the preseason rankings or maybe even their own expectations with some of the guys they've been able to add through the portal?
I don't know about their expectations, but going into kind of the offseason with Georgia, especially given some of the cornerback attrition they had, lose two guys to the NFL. First, I think 34 picks. They had two guys come off the board. They lost Tyreek Stevenson, their starter nickel, to Miami via the transfer portal. Like, they had some questions. But when you add Darian Kendrick, when you add Tyke from West Virginia, who was an All-American nickel there, you add Eric Gilbert, you add talent across the board. I think Georgia's gone from a contender with some question marks to a place where if they don't win a national title, I think it's a bit of a disappointment. Kirby Smart has his quarterback. They have all the weapons in the world, even with George Pickens kind of likely missing the season. I don't think there are many excuses for this Georgia team heading into 2021.
And Chris, how much does that make this transfer portal kind of trending? When I'm talking about the teams that got a shot to win the national championship. Obviously, everybody's trying to go get them a Joe Burrow. When you look at what he was able to do for that 2019 LSU team, you look at Georgia this year, adding guys like Gilbert and Drake and those guys. How much is it? Obviously, they're going to use it, but how much is it if it doesn't work? They kind of go back to their bread and butter of just straight recruiting guys out of high school compared to if they do put up a run like that 2019 LSU team, or they trying to, really utilize the transfer portal as a means to just fulfill needs for guys to come in and play right now.
Yeah, I think that's the scary thing about Georgia, Alabama, Oklahoma, Ohio State, some of these programs using the transfer portal. Because not only are they adding the top guys in the portal every year, like I think Alabama signed our number one overall transfer and Henry To'oTo'o in 24/7 Sports' rankings. They also signed Jameson Williams from Ohio State to kind of bring in and shore up that wide receiver room. We're seeing like these contenders, these annual contenders sign 2 of the top 20 transfers, filling needs. Plus, they're still signing elite recruiting classes. Alabama just signed the best overall recruiting class in 24/7 Sports history in 2021 from a pure numbers perspective. I don't really think anybody's going to ever match that 2017 class. But when they can do that and additionally add Henry To'oTo'o to kind of fill a need at middle linebacker next to Christian Williams, that's a pretty scary proposition. I think Nick Saban said the rich are likely going to get richer via the portal. He doesn't love the rules, but he's going to play by them. And we've kind of seen that. Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, Ohio State have all really kind of gotten who they wanted via the portal, and they can still do that while signing elite high school classes.
Chris Hummer, 247 Sports. And Chris, I know we're still a couple months out from practice even starting, but what do you kind of expect from quality of play perspectives potentially in college football where, some teams played 13 games last year. If you didn't make a bowl game in the Big Ten, you played 5 or 6. Does that have a factor where you could potentially have guys who have played not even half a season of football. Some people who have opted out haven't played football essentially in a year, now coming back trying to play college football again. How does that affect the quality of play that we might see, maybe even especially in just the first month of college football?
Yeah, I mean, it could be a little choppy for some guys. Like, for example, like I think Old Dominion hasn't played in over a year. I'm sure that team is not going to be quite as ready to go as the people on its schedule. But I think all in all, we saw really sloppy quality of play last year because of everything that was happening. Like COVID protocols limited the number of practice teams could have. Most teams didn't have a spring. This offseason's been totally different. Everybody's gone through a full spring. They're having full off-season conditioning workouts. They're allowed to work out on campus, which is huge. There were so many players last year that came into the fall just like completely out of shape because they didn't have the equipment necessary at home to kind of do those workouts. So I think if anything, at least when you compare it to what we saw last year, I expect the quality of play across the board to be much better is kind of what I would look at it with it.
Chris, finally, college football, obviously looking ahead to a potential expansion of the college football playoff. Assuming we get to 12 teams and you have more access, more pathways into the postseason tournament to determine a champion, could that result in a little more parity in recruiting and maybe even in the transfer portal if, you could go to maybe a G5 school, still make it to a championship, or
I think it absolutely could.
go to a Power 5 school that maybe is secondary in their league. Yeah.
I don't know if it's better for crowning a champion, but it certainly introduces more parity, as you said. I just think selling the opportunity to make the playoff is such a big thing for a team trying to make the jump. I think in the BCS era, I think upward mobility was a little easier because only 2 people made the national championship every year. But there were plenty of teams that said, like, if we build there, we have a chance to kind of get to that point. And right now, with the level of dominance we've seen from Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, Ohio State, and Georgia kind of in the playoff mix, along with Notre Dame, like it's kind of shut out some teams, opening up the doors for an Oregon to kind of push back into it, for a USC to kind of get back into it, for even a Texas, if they get things to get back into it, would be huge for those programs from a recruiting standpoint. And I really do think it could make some of those 5-stars who are automatically going to Alabama because they think that's the best place to win and develop think twice because they can win other places potentially.
Chris Hummer, 247 Sports, our guest here on 3 and Out. Chris, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Chris Hummer joining us here on 3 and Out. Apparently, his cat there for half a second, hanging up the phone as well. But no, transfer portal has changed the game. As he said, we've seen guys. We'll talk about it just a little bit from Georgia. Guys jumping into the transfer portal looking for a place to go, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't in terms of having a place to land. But quickly, before we step aside, how do you guys feel on the whole the transfer portal has worked in college football? Has it been the free-for-all? Has it been good for the players? Has it been bad for the players, the way it's kind of executed and been turned into here in the last year plus?
I think it's been good and bad. It's been good for the guys for whom, still get that same credibility of not losing that attention, going, without leaving these big time schools. I try not to look at a guy like Joe Burrow as the barometer because that's a pretty steep, hill to climb. But he kind of is because that's what everybody's looking for. Kevin, we always just go get Nick Saban. You see what one player can do for an entire roster, even though that roster was stacked. I just think about it. Alabama, it has the best recruiting class in 2021, and they got the number 1 player in the transfer portal. So it's like the rich ain't getting richer. No, the rich just bought a freaking yacht. That's what they're doing at that point. When you look at it, because they're already a step above everybody else. So it does work for the guys who got that game film. Because if you a non-quarterback, you may not ever leave out of that.
We've got Go ahead, BJ, real quick. Sorry.
No, I was going to say good and bad. I think what Ben said makes sense. I like guys having options, but the impact on roster construction, recruiting, potentially concerning as well.
We've got more to come here on 3 Now, including in the transfer portal. Georgia, since a Southeast Georgia product puts himself in the transfer portal. We'll get to that next. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here, 3 and Out on this Tuesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. We talked about the transfer portal there with Chris Hummer. Demetrius Robertson from UGA, also Savannah Christian, into the transfer portal here just recently. So no word on where he's potentially going to go, BJ, but obviously a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. Record-breaking season as a freshman at Cal. Should have plenty of folks interested, obviously, in his talent as he's jumped into the transfer portal. He will not be there at the University of Georgia.
Yeah, very talented young man. You look at his numbers. You mentioned that freshman year, 50 catches for 767 yards and 7 touchdowns as a freshman at Cal. And his whole career has 99 career receptions. So you're talking about a guy that has basically 100 catches playing at Cal in Georgia. So big-time talent, wishing him the best, and certainly will be interesting to see where he ends up.
Demetrius is a big-time talent, BJ and Kevin. I do wish him the best, but sometimes – perception ain't always reality. I understand what he did his freshman year, BJ, but I mean, no one's gonna judge you, based on what you've done at another school. They're gonna look at what your production has been since you've been at Georgia, and it hasn't been bad. But the thing is, they're gonna be asking, in a Georgia team that is picked to win the national championship or at least compete for it, you are transferring. I'm always rooting. I'm always on the side of the player, but perception doesn't always work on his side. I mean, Jamie Newman was supposed to be a first-round pick, right? Didn't go to Georgia, didn't get picked.
And Demetrius into the transfer portal out of the University of Georgia. We'll come back. Take 3 right around the corner. McLean Baxley, Rich Stiles next hour as well on 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Great to be back. Hour two, just absolutely filled to the brim here in hour two. McLean Baxley going to join us from the AJC. We're talking Hawks and 76ers after last night's big Game 4 win by Atlanta. Also, Rich Stiles going to join us, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show. We've got the U.S. Open this week and already a lot of drama, which leads us right into take one as it's take three here on 3 and Out. Per reports, Bryson DeChambeau told the USGA he was, quote, not okay with being paired with Brooks Koepka in the U.S. Open, and the USGA agreed to not pair them. On the scale of, diamond being tough to down pillows, how soft is that take by Bryson DeChambeau?
I mean, yeah, that's a little absurd. I got to go down pillow with this one because I had to get clarification from you guys because I kind of didn't even understand this, and I guess we can ask Rich Stiles about it moving forward. But is it common practice? And apparently, it's not for the USGA to call and ask somebody, "Hey, are you cool being paired up with this guy? Are you going to be okay with that?" Like you're pro golfers, man. Just go play with who you're paired with, and I would even think beyond that. If somebody's your rival in the sport, right? Like when Magic and Bird were going at it, Magic wanted Bird, Bird wanted Magic. If that's your rival, wouldn't you want to be paired off so that you could go head to head and you could stare down, you could go head to head, try to get in each other's heads, I know golf isn't so much about talking smack, but just being there right one-on-one with each other. Wouldn't that sort of be more appealing? So I didn't understand, and admittedly, I am not a expert on the game of golf, but I did not know that it was commonplace and don't think it is to call and say, "Hey, are we cool with everybody being in this group?" And then I would think if you were rivals, you would want that so y'all could directly compete. So yeah, I don't really get this.
Don't they pair people in golf? Isn't this what they do? They put you with a pairing. I think Kevin said it. You don't even got to talk to each other. You got to talk to your caddy. You got to take your hat off, on the 18th and then shake your hand. Isn't that traditionalist of what golf is? This is why it's hard to watch golf. Bryson DeChambeau, and now you got Brooks. I don't want to get paired with him. I don't want to be over there. I mean, I don't like him. Does that make golf better to put the rivals right there next to each other? No. I mean, I want to play. I just don't want to play next to him. How old are we? This is that nonsense. I mean, and once again, I play the PGA. Why should you even allow this? Because what's really going to happen, Kevin, somebody else going to do it. Like Justin Thomas going to say, "I don't want to get paired with him either, man. He plays too slow." It is ridiculous. It is golf. And this ain't what y'all talking about on the scale of diamond, a down pull up. No, this is Charmin soft. This is squeezably soft. I'm just saying it is ridiculous.
Yeah.
The fact that you don't want to get paired with somebody because, quote, got good chemistry. Y'all ain't getting married. Y'all finna play the game. It's ridiculous. And they should not even allow them to do this because it's what it says. "Bryce, you all right?" "I'm not with him, Emma." "Is he coming?" Oh my God, man, swing the club and get out of here with that nonsense. Charmin.
Oh, very much so.
Well, the PR tour has already officially started. They're trying to cover it up now. The USGA has come out and unequivocally denied any such conversation. And Bryson DeChambeau's manager also came out and said, no, Bryson was never asked. I'm going to stick with the per sources because the per sources are usually right. But
they wouldn't be saying they didn't say it if they hadn't said it.
But they are going to do what typically happens at the U.S. Open is and this is their excuse they're trying to use. Look, so we're sticking to tradition. Is usually the defending champion gets paired with the current amateur champion, and that's fine, except it's groups of 3. So there's still one more spot there. So that excuse doesn't fly. And imagine being that poor U.S. amateur champion if Brooks Koepka had been paired up with Bryson DeChambeau and having to play with those guys with all that animosity between them. He's probably like, thank God they didn't get paired up because that would have been real awkward.
No, I agree. But I think if that's true, that's just soft. I mean, we've seen guys that don't like each other.
Oh, it's softer than Kevin in the paint. It's soft. Hey, you still got that bone bruise? What's up?
Wait. Hold on. This is what I love. Kevin, let me tell y'all something, man. Kevin, number one, I came out of retirement. Okay, and I did, and you did kind of hit it with that Patrick Beverly right there in the side. And Kevin was like, hey, man, I mean, Kevin, you was out a little bit, but I'm just saying, Kevin, let him know how you not soft in the paint.
It's fine. He's got to have a W.
I mean, he did almost pass out.
True.
We were concerned about you. Like I was really concerned about you. I didn't know what happened.
For those of you who don't know, we were playing inside the office basketball on one of those door hangy basketball hoops, and I maybe came into the paint a little hard, and Kevin took a knee into the thigh, and he almost died. Got all sweaty, pasty. Had to sit down for a while.
I was concerned, man. Like I was really worried. You were having difficulties, like a lot of like physical difficulty. I was concerned.
Yeah, I never seen Kevin like that. Like I was saying to myself, I go, well, I'm on CPR, but if he pass out, he gonna be toe up messing with me. I'm not gonna resuscitate him. But Kevin, he got all right though. I mean, Kevin was going back to his old Kevin grew up in that age to where the big man reigned supreme, and Christian hit it with that, that 90s thrusted to the side. And, well, Kevin was never the same. Kevin, you ain't soft in the paint. I'm just saying. I've seen guys way softer than you.
I took a knee to the femur. It's fine. I had to walk it off. It hurt. I apologize. Sorry that
there's some
full speed Christian hitting me straight knee into the femur.
Oh, listen, full speed Christian's a dangerous thing.
I understand. It hurt for a minute. I had to walk it off. It's fine.
All right, carry on. We got to get to the snake draft with Rich. We got to talk to McLean.
I don't think anybody wants to be comparing who's sharp and soft around here.
You ain't lying. Ain't none of that.
Did I say you were the softest in the paint in this office? No.
All right, moving along. Take two. Every question around Gardner Minshew's future in Jacksonville has been shut down by Urban Meyer. Not necessarily a Urban Meyer or a Gardner Minshew question, but why are coaches so snippy when you ask them about their quarterbacks? Nothing football coaches do. They'll answer any question. Some with coach speak, but you say, hey, man, what you guys doing with your quarterback? Ben, your former college coach used to do this too. Hey, Coach Spurrier, man, what's up with your quarterback? No. I'm going to play the guy that's getting why do they get so upset about the quarterback questions?
Because it's the first time that, they finally getting, told to their face, I'm tired of you lying to me. I can deal with other lies. I can deal with the fact that the offense not that good, but we played well. I can deal with the fact that the defense can't stop a nosebleed, but we're playing well. Hey, what's going on with the quarterbacks, coach? Well, these guys are playing really well. No, they're not. Gardner Minshew, he thought, he's saying that the reason why you don't like him is because, he got a Joe Dirt beard and haircut, and he rides around the country in a Winnebago begging for gas and food. So I just think that every other thing it shows to Kevin, they don't really care about no other position. Do they really care about what's going on with the tight ends? No. Do they really care about what's going on with the secondary? No. What's going on with the quarterbacks, coach? Ask me something else. Get all Greg Popovich on you. Get all politically correct. Don't ask me. How dare you ask me about the guy that's been here, you know what I'm saying, because he wants to play, and Tim Tebow is going to be our Wildcat. So, yes, because at the end of the day, coaches be lying to us, and we can accept that lie, but just tell the truth one time in your life. One time in your life, coach. I'm just asking about Gardner. I'm asking about BJ's home. BJ was Gardner Minshew for Halloween. What happened to that Halloween outfit? In the trash. No one talks about Gardner anymore.
Okay, to the original question, you guys are right. It's amazing. Like, they won't say anything about the quarterbacks. Like, even if you have a clear number one, a clear number two, and a clear number three, and you ask about the starting quarterback, it's, oh, well, all of our quarterbacks are really playing well, and, we're just trying to compete. And no, it's okay to have a starting quarterback, a backup quarterback. Yeah, and coaches do not like talking about the quarterbacks. But with the Jaguars specifically, Coach Meyer had to know this was coming. I mean, right, you have on your roster, you have the number one overall pick and one of the great quarterbacks in college football history. You have a guy that is at least very well known and has put up, some good numbers, albeit on bad teams, in Gardner Minshew. You went out and signed C.J. Beathard, who's been a starter in the NFL, and Cody might know better than me but he was a starter in San Francisco before they signed Garoppolo, and then when Garoppolo was hurt, so he has a couple of years of starting experience. Then you got Jake Luton, who you allegedly like, so you're going to get asked about it. But yeah, coaches can't handle it. I don't understand it, and it's so weird. They'll talk about the depth chart anywhere else. Quarterback, nope, can't do it.
That's true. Christian just said in my ear, Nick Saban, like went ballistic on Maria Taylor for asking about quarterbacks. So it's like it's just the quarterback spot, man. Like,
oh yeah, I'm not going to talk about it. So stop asking me.
Yeah, so stop asking.
Yeah, stop asking me. I'm not going to talk about it. I mean,
quit asking.
She should have DDT'd him right there. Right on the side.
Taylor would roll.
Moving along to that's another take 3 question for another day. We got take 3 here. It's does any scene coming up on it's Father's Day weekend coming up as well, but does any scene from a sports movie make you cry?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think there are multiple. You think about a couple of movies, like remember the Titans, when you have Julius come to see Gary, and Gary's in the bed, and he's recovering, and the nurse says, "Hey, only family can come in," and he goes, "Can't you see that's my brother?" That's
Alice.
emotional. Yeah. And then I think Friday Night Lights has a couple of ones. Booby's injury, giving the championship ring at the end. I mean, Christian, you were saying Miracle has some moments that'll get you. Yeah, I mean, yes, sports movies can make you cry. Absolutely.
Don't act fake, Kevin. Don't act brand new.
I'm not. Go ahead.
I mean, when Keanu Reeves was a coach, and I think the movie was called Hardball, when he was a baseball coach, and the little kids in there got killed in there. Like that really like hit me hard. I mean, the linebacker on the program, the one that told, like he told his mom, he told his mom, "I'm gonna get you the house to go with it," and then he blew out his leg. And I was like, man, it's like you become those characters, and obviously, I mean, BJ, I was talking about to the Friday Night Lights. I mean, look, that stuff really hit me home. Number one, I'm crying because I'm like, dude, get to go to the playoffs. They got beat. I'm like, come on, man, what kind of movie is this? They supposed to win in the end. I got to deal with the fact that Booby got the worst haircut in the world, sitting in the car with his uncle. Like, what they gonna do? Come on, man. Like, Booby's like, that stuff is rough. Because the uncle looking at him like, are you telling me I got to go to work? Yes. And me too, uncle. So, yeah, I mean, Booby, the kid at Hardball, and obviously the kid blown out his knee, that was pretty rough.
That's a lot of crying at movies. That's all I'll say.
You don't cry.
Nothing for you, Kevin. Nothing for you.
Yeah, that is true. That is that I will say that. I will supersede what I was going to say with what Christian just said. Yeah, when you get a little misty when Kevin Costner's like, "Dad, you want to have a catch?" Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
that's probably it. That's probably it for me. Why are you crying at Miracle? I mean, like, seriously,
bro. When you have Al Michaels come on with they like play the actual Al Michaels, and he says, right, "You believe in miracles?" And you have Kurt Russell, and he's just like doing the fist pump. I mean, just shut it down. America, the pride,
crying at that,
like just huge tears, like weeping like a baby out of pride. Wow. Like no John Moreno tears.
Go ahead. No, Kevin. Go ahead, Kevin. No, Kevin.
At BC writing in says, "We are Marshall." That one's tough.
No, Kevin, go ahead. We mentioned Miracle. Go ahead and give us your Kurt Russell. Go ahead.
What? Again? No, that's not even a good one.
Again.
That is a good movie. I don't think I've ever cried at Miracle.
The United States of America. Oh, just shut it down.
You cried when he said, "I play for the United States of America"?
Kevin, I pretty much cried that whole movie. It's amazing.
Christian, go ahead and tell us how you really feel. Like, listen, man,
hey, Kevin never cries. Kevin has never cried.
At Miracle?
You get overwhelmed with the pride and the pride and your underdogs and oh man, all of it.
You come out on top in the end, though. It's a great movie. You don't need nothing to be sad about or crying tears of joy. Just get after it.
It's just emotional, man.
We know how it ends.
But I mean, if you don't cry when Tim McGraw puts the ring on his son's finger at the end of Friday Night Lights, I don't know, like what you're doing with your life. But you need to talk to somebody.
You need to talk to
somebody.
Friday Night Lights.
Right.
It's just such a good movie, man. I mean, that's it.
You were sent down here to learn how to play football, and you have.
I know we have to go, but just a freezing cold take from one of our interns, Southern
He
Brit.
gives him the ring for running the ball
Yeah.
and a play with a penalty.
That's right. But no, Southern Brit, our intern here, saying that the series Friday Night Lights better than the movie,
That's ridiculous.
which is just unfortunate.
It's a bad take.
Yeah.
Yeah, not watching that.
It's a bad take. But he did earn the championship ring on a run during a penalty. So a play that didn't count. Good job there. Tim McGraw's going to give you a ring, son. I'm ruining the movie for you now.
No, you're not. You can't, Kevin. I know you try to, but you can't.
That's take 3. We'll come back when McLean Baxley will join us for talking Hawks 76ers. Next, it's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Hawks a big winner last night over the 76ers, 103-100. McLean Baxley there with the AJC joins us here on 3 and Out. McLean, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Doing well.
And a lot of people saying the environment for the ball game last night, one of the best, loudest arenas they've seen in relation to a Hawks game, maybe ever, maybe if not ever, the last 20 years that we've seen with any team surrounding the Hawks.
Yeah, I mean, I personally have been to this. Last night was my third Hawks game this postseason, and I mean, it was, especially the second half, obviously, was insane. Those last minutes where the Hawks kept falling back in to take the lead and go back and forth with Philly, and then obviously getting the win there at the end. I mean, it was electric. It was loud. It was rambunctious. It was a very fun environment to be around.
What changed in the second half? I know Philly only scored 38 points in the second half. Atlanta obviously got right offensively. What was the biggest difference?
I think, before the game, Nate McMillan said it was not a must-win game, but a need-to-win game. I think they really flipped the switch there at halftime, and John Collins came out hot. Trae Young came out. And, the team just kind of had really good offensive stints. And they also were, using their defense, getting the stops that they weren't getting in games 2 and 3 against, Joel Embiid and, Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris. The stops were coming and translating into quick offense on fast breaks and just smart possession. So everything that kind of wasn't working in the first quarter, first half, was working in the second half, and they were able to, what was once an 18-point deficit, came back and took a lead.
And McLean, what does that say about this young Hawks team when you think about the fact that being down by 18, not only really having that first series under their belt against the Knickerbockers, to be able to come into the series still being the heavy underdog, and for Trae Young to not play his best basketball, to still him hit that flow. They had to say a lot about this team that's still finding their identity, as well as listening and buying into what Nate McMillan is definitely coaching.
Yeah, it's coaching. It's willpower. It's impressive, is what it is. I think the fact that they won a game against the Sixers this series is obviously way ahead of schedule of where this team's supposed to be. Really, Clint Capella is really the only guy that's had NBA playoff experience. Bogey and Gallinari have had success overseas, but I mean, it's a very young team, and the fact that they not only won one game, but won a second game against the number 1 overall seed, the number 1 team in the NBA in the Eastern Conference, and a very experienced, I mean, this is one of their worst matchups on paper. We saw that in games 2 and 3 with the size and just expertise would be overpowering, and they fought back and were able to tie the series last night. And so they're ahead of schedule, and it's a team that does not want to go to postseason, or does not want to go to off season yet from the Hawks team.
As you mentioned, really came out and did a number on Embiid and Simmons in the second half. 0 for 12 for Embiid. Is that just a portion of maybe Embiid not 100%, or have the Hawks found a little something they can go to kind of keep Embiid in check?
A little bit of both. Embiid's obviously hurting. That he said last night that there in that last session, and if he was healthy, he would have dunked it instead of go for the layup there in that last 15, 16 seconds. It ended up being the turnover in the game. He said they would have gone up for a dunk and probably gotten an and one to increase the Phillies lead, or Philadelphia's lead. But also the 3 with Capella and Collins and Gallinari has been huge, especially last night. He still was able to score. Embiid was, but he wasn't getting the foul line. He wasn't getting the calls that in the first 3 games he was getting. So that really limited him. And that 3, those big 3 guys, played really good defense against one of the best scorers in the NBA, one of the best players in the NBA. So really impressive from again Capella, Collins, and Gallinari, especially there in that second half.
Atlanta as a team, McLean, just 4 turnovers in the whole game last night. How impressive was that?
Huge. I mean, Trae Young talked about it a good deal in the post game last night, and it's something that has really doomed Atlanta in all 3 of their losses this postseason. In the game against the Knicks in the first series, and then the 2 losses here, and the fact that they were able to not play great offense. They shot 35%, I believe, from the field, and there's not great offense, but still being able to have 101 possessions and not turn the ball over a lot was huge against this team that can turn those turnovers into points very easily, very quickly, as we've seen in other games this season. So from Philadelphia, so huge stat there. Only 4 turnovers against one of the best defensive teams. I mean, they had Simmons, who finished second in Defensive Player of the Year voting, and then Embiid was obviously a huge split as well. So very impressive stat to only finish with 4 turnovers.
I mean, 12 of 40 from the three. I mean, obviously those guys are going to definitely, shoot a lot of threes. Trey and Bogdanovich wasn't that efficient from the three. If they can just improve their 3-point efficiency, how much dangerous of a team does that make them, not just potentially for this series, if and when they do go to the finals?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that it's kind of been their bread and butter. I mean, we saw that. I mean, you'll never have. They set the franchise playoff record there in Game 1, hitting 20 3-pointers, but you won't see that again. But it's something that against this very tall, very lengthy Philadelphia team, they're not going to get a lot of points in the paint, and so they've got to use the bread and butter. Trey Young is a great 3-point shooter. Bogdanovich, Kevin Huerter had a really good game last night, starting for the first time this playoff series. So if they can get that 3-point three ball going, and the more shots you take, I mean, the higher chances are to make more shots, right? So. I think they're going to try and continue that. Maybe not throw. I kind of joked with one of my friends pregame that they're going to need at least 40 3-pointers, and that's exactly how many they took last night. So maybe 40 is the number to beat the Sixers.
McLean Baxley, AJC, joining us here on 3 and Out. You mentioned kind of ahead of schedule a couple of times here for the Hawks. Do you get the sense that they feel like they're playing with house money in this series? That obviously, when Nate McMillan was brought in, this team was going nowhere fast, and here they are, 2 wins away from potentially moving into the Eastern Conference Finals. Do you feel like they are even surprised they're this far in the playoffs right now?
They won't say it. I mean, Trey Young and John Collins and all of them will say that they expect to win every game, and but they have to feel this way. I mean, they were a team 2 months ago who wasn't even a playoff team, and now, like you said, they're 2 wins away from the semifinal, the conference finals, against the Nets or the Bucks. So it's impressive. It's now a new series. It's a 3-game series, basically. Home field or home court is nothing. If the Hawks want to win, they're going to have to win at least 1 game in Philadelphia, which they've done already this series. So I think there's a lot of momentum for sure, especially last night. The way they won, in Game 1, it was, that 3 ball was really working, and they kind of got out to an early lead, and Philadelphia kind of made it close there in the fourth quarter. But, the way they won last night, to come back from a 18-point deficit, and, Embiid is definitely hurting. He's getting more hurt every game. His health is definitely a big concern for Sixers and Sixers fans. But I mean, and then just believing, each win and each time you're out there, you're kind of figuring out this Philadelphia team who are the big bad guys of the East, and who are just as desperate to get to that next round of, a few years ago, they were that wild shot from Kawhi Leonard in Toronto from reaching the Eastern Finals. So these are 2 teams that definitely still want to get to that next point. But the Hawks definitely have to feel impressed, and like they've done a lot, but there's still more to be done.
And as a follow-up to that, now that we're tied 2-2 and, folks are thinking about a Game 7 potentially, if you split the next 2, does it feel like there's a lot of pressure and kind of mounting pressure on Philadelphia? Is that something you can sense being at these games?
Yeah, I mean, Doc Rivers said it last night that, they let this one get away. This is a game where they could go up 3-1, go back home and, have a 3-1, have 2 games to play with. Now, as you said, it's tied, and they are the 1 seed, and their star is hurting. If they would have won last night, you got to feel good. Going into Game 5, it's home court. You just come off a win, a sweep in Atlanta, which is not an easy place to win, as they've shown this past few months. But yeah, I think their back is kind of against the wall, and their one big weapon, Joel Embiid, was vulnerable last night. Both on offense and on defense. So, you got to be scratching your head a little bit if you're Doc Rivers, if you're, Ben Simmons and Embiid. But, they're still, they still have, 2 home games, and you got to defend home court. but I definitely think they expected a win last night. But both from the post game comments and just the mood on the sidelines.
And with everything that he's done in the previous series to this series, are we watching Trae Young go from star to superstar status if he can keep this momentum up?
Yeah, I mean, what he did last night, he came out and took his shirt off and had the shoulder tape and took himself out of the game for a minute and had it wrapped up and heat pad on it. And still, I think it was the first he was the first playoff performer to have 25 points and 15 rebounds or 15 assists, excuse me, and he had 18 assists. And I mean that those last 2 minutes, every point went through him. So I mean, it's super impressive. You just got to think. I mean, he's only his third year, and I mean, the fact that he's been able to do this is insane. And I think the Knicks series showed that yes, he is a superstar. He is, the face of the franchise. He is, one of the top, 10, 15 players in the NBA. This series has shown that it can be, longevity, and that he can do more than just be a scorer, more than just a disher. So it's been super fun to watch and super impressive to see him grow from, just even, a few months ago when they were that, outside looking in team to now 2 games away from a Eastern Conference Finals.
And again, they even up the series last night. McLean Baxley, AJC, joining us here on 3 and Out. McLean, thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
And we'll see if the Hawks can take a lead back in this series in Game 5. We'll come back. We'll switch gears, talk a little golf. Rich Styles of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show, U.S. Open this week. He joins us next here on 3 and Out. It is 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Major championship this week. The USGA's got the U.S. Open at Torrey Pines coming up this weekend. Rich Stiles, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show, joins us here on 3 and Out. Rich, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. I am waiting for the announcement of the MMA fight between Brooks and Bryson.
Yeah, yes, aren't we all? And we'll obviously going to have a draft for the U.S. Open coming up. Rich, you are the defending champ. Both in the game, you tied Christian for the Masters and then beat him just like he stole something there on the golf course. And so we'll let you pick first here in a minute. But speak to that. Obviously, the USGA and Bryson's people are walking this back. But, I mean, that's the worst of all looks, right? When you're like, don't pair me with somebody playing professional golf.
I mean, it is so ridiculous. I mean, nobody did anything through any of the tournaments when Tiger and Phil weren't getting along. I mean, they've never done that before. Why they even had that up as a PR nightmare. And no, they don't like each other, but it doesn't mean if they're supposed to play with each other that they can opt out. That's not supposed to happen. I think the USGA did a bad thing. Made a mistake, tried to cover it up. It's not upable. That's such a word. Well, it'd be great in Scrabble if it was. But the point is, this is ridiculous. It's like two kids who both should be in timeout that they can't get along. It's just ridiculous.
I guess I'll continue to ask what was asked a couple of weeks ago as it kind of changes. Is this still good for golf?
Well, this isn't what just happened where I don't want to play with him. I mean, that's not. I mean, that's giving in to the immature personalities that you have with both of these guys who are supposed to be major. They are major champions. They're big stars on the PGA Tour. And they're giving in to the whim that they may not get along. Maybe we should just change it. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's not good for golf what happened today.
And Rich, does that kind of go? We always talking about who's going to be the next big face of golf. I mean, do things like this kind of make it so that golf is rather just saying, look, we rather have guys whoever's playing well at the time. We obviously help boost our ratings. But when you got two of obviously one of the biggest names in golf with the guy, Guy Brooks and Bryson, when they doing stuff like this, I mean, for the casual viewer, they like it because we just naturally like chaos. But for the traditional golf fans, they're thinking, why are these two guys doing this, and why is the PGA even agreeing to this nonsense?
I agree. I mean, I don't know why they're even bringing this up. I mean, why the PR made a mistake, USGA made a mistake, Brooks. They had to redo the interview when Bryson walked by with his metal spikes, which upset Brooks because Bryson gets so much attention, and I think Brooks doesn't feel like he gets enough attention. And he even announced last week, which I thought was horrible for the sponsors and the PGA, that he can't get excited about playing anything except majors. I mean, come on. That's just not – I mean, this guy's made millions off of the golf game, much more than just the majors with his endorsements because he's on the field and on the course all the time. I mean, I just think that they're giving in to the immature personalities because these two guys can't get along.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be more drama, as you said, heading into the U.S. Open coming up this weekend. We'll see how it kind of plays out, but we've got to get to our draft here, Rich. Everybody's going to get 3 players. We'll do it just like the Masters.
All right.
Where you as the defending champ will start first, and then we'll snake it around through the office or through the show, and totally arbitrarily, apparently I'm last because that's how.
That's a good thing because you get 2 picks in a row.
Is it? Would I rather have number 2 or would I rather have number 5?
Do you want to trade?
Go ahead.
Do you want to trade for the number 2 pick?
Go ahead, Rich.
All
right, John Rahm.
All right.
Rich, I don't like this.
I was going to pick him.
Oh, John Rahm.
I was going to pick him.
That's a great pick. I'm going to go just because all this guy does is push-ups between U.S. Open appearances. I'm going with Brooks Koepka. I mean, he's a previous U.S. Open champion. He's in the spotlight right now for all the right reasons. Give me Brooks.
As long as he didn't have to look at Bryson, he might.
No, he's fine with it. It's Bryson that doesn't want this smoke.
What a surprise that one is.
All right, BJ, you are up.
No, Ben's up.
Oh, Ben is up apparently. Sorry.
Uh,
give me Tony Finau.
Oh, that's a good pick. BJ.
Colin Morikawa.
Oh, Rich likes that pick.
Good choice. That's a good choice.
I'm gonna have to.
All right, 2 picks in a row there, Kevo.
Rich really came out of.
You still have the defending Masters champion on there.
Yeah, he came out and got me with the John Rahm.
You literally still have the defending U.S. Open champion on there.
I can't pick Bryson. Though.
Why?
I don't like Bryson.
So you can't pick him.
I can't.
Does your opinion of him make him a better or worse golfer?
No, but I just can't. I can't
right,
pick him.
Carry on.
I just can't pick him. Man, Rich really got me. I'll go Dustin Johnson.
He's going off at 15-1, which is second in the odds to win.
All right.
All right. So you again.
I get another one coming back around here. Man, I'll go with the guy who played pretty well. I believe it was last week with Harris English.
Yeah,
he played really well last week. So
we still have 3 defending major champions on the board.
I mean, come on, Rich. I know you got, but do you really think Phil Mickelson's going to go and win the U.S.
What about
Open?
Hideki Matsuyama?
I do not.
All right, BJ, you're back up.
That's who I'm going with. Give me Hideki Matsuyama.
All right, Ben, you are back on the clock.
Give me Justin Thomas.
That's a good pick. Oh man. Do I pair Brooks Koepka and Bryson up? Do I have to do it?
I guess you have to.
Yeah, Bryson. I'll pair them up. This is amazing. If they don't want to be paired up in real life, they're going to be paired up in our fantasy draft. All right, Rich, it's back to you. You get 2 in a row here.
Who did you pick?
I picked Bryson.
Oh, you did? Okay. All right. I'm going to pick, let's see. I'm going to pick Webb Simpson.
All right, and you get 1 more.
Let's see. 1 more. I'll take Phil just because he's old.
Love it.
Just because he's old.
Hey, you old guys got to stick together, right, Rich?
Well, you should know.
Hey, that's 2 old guys that have won.
Damn.
One major, one
Damn.
beats you head up.
Oh,
Go
Kevin.
ahead.
No, Kevin, you can be included in that group too. Old guys got to stick together. It's fine.
Sure.
Shoot. Rory's been playing better, but I just don't know if I can buy Rory. Oh, man. Give me Jordan. I'll go with Jordan Spieth.
All right. That's
Ben, it's
Ben
to
back
you.
up there.
I will go with Rory. I would just stick with
Okay, all right.
Give me Rory.
BJ, final pick.
Xander Schauffele.
Yander, you just wanted to say his name correctly.
Can you spell that for a bonus point without looking?
XANDERSCHAUFFLE. Yeah, well, I'm right, but I'm right.
Maybe it is. Maybe it is.
All right, Kevin, you got the final one. Here we go.
I was gonna say you can pretty much say whatever you want at that point, man.
No one's going with Patrick Reed. You got Scotty Scheffler out there.
Patrick Reed really let me down when
Will Zalatoris had an unbelievable showing at the Masters, and he's been really good since.
I'm thinking, like, should I take a long shot on
Patrick Cantlay still out there?
There's a couple of guys that always seem to be like up and around the leaderboard. I'm like, can I do it? Or they'll probably miss the cut, which according to Christian's rules adds like 178 strokes.
80 strokes per round missed.
What if they withdraw on the first round?
Then that's 240 strokes, brother. No, more than that. Can't do math. Leave me alone. 320.
Let me do. I'm just gonna take a flyer. Let me go. Billy Horschel. I'm gonna take a flyer.
Billy Horschel.
Oh, there's a wild one.
Wait, Rich. Wild in a good way or a what the hell are you doing way?
Probably the latter.
Okay.
I'm just taking one off the cuff.
So it's like Rich. It was like when the Raiders took Alex Leatherwood in the first round of the NFL draft, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly, Kevin.
All right, Rich. We'll see how it goes, and we'll see if you have to play Christian to beat him again on the golf course if it comes down to a tie. So
hey,
all right.
And you can listen to the Back Nine Boys this Saturday.
Yeah, Back Nine Boys golf show on a Saturday and Sunday. I know Rich will be talking U.S. Open. While we got you, Rich, who you have coming up on Saturday?
Well, we've got Bo Van Pelt, who played very, very well in last weekend's tournament. And we have the gentleman who designed Congaree on the golf course. He is the guy who built it for the two billionaires, and we will have him on the show this Saturday.
Oh, looking forward to it. Again, they just played there last week on the PGA Tour. Rich, always a pleasure. We'll talk soon. Thanks so much.
All right, guys. Thanks.
All right, quickly before we go in, how you feeling about your picks? I'll ask BJ and Ben because I know how Christian feels. He'll be like, I feel great. How do you feel about your picks, fellas?
I mean, I feel pretty good. I mean, I have guys that have been successful, that have been consistent, that have won. I feel good.
I mean, what? Justin Thomas, I think, ranked number 2 in the world right now. Rory, he's always good enough for any tournament that he's in. I mean, and I got Mr. Tony Finau. I feel good.
As long as Tony Finau doesn't celebrate hitting a hole-in-one on a par 3, Ben should be okay. And BJ, I can tell you, Xander Schauffele will probably be leading the tournament the entire time until the 4th round, where he will then implode.
All right, Christian, you are probably outside of Rich, you are the biggest golf fan on the show. Whose team do you favor right now? Just blind on a Tuesday.
What?
Do you feel good? Like you're going to come out on top here?
I was going to say you or me. I think Dustin Johnson has a really good shot, but I think getting Brooks Koepka, Bryson, and Jordan, I feel really solid.
Yeah, I bet. That's the benefits of picking second. We've got more to come here on 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back, 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you were with us here. Coming up in the final hour of the program, when we return, we will chat with Ross Dellinger, Sports Illustrated. BJ and Ben, he has been at the forefront of the name, image, and likeness there around college football. So we'll talk to him about that and all of its many facets when we come back with him. And again, he was there in D.C. while Mark Emmert and guys were testifying about name, image, likeness, and how soon does he think stuff like that could even get done on a national level. So he will join us when we'll come back. Some interesting Braves news out there on the horizon, as put out there by Alex Anthopoulos. So we will get to that in the final hour as well. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio, at Pigskin Radio. Ross Dellinger, Sports Illustrated, joins us when we return here on 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Final hour of 3 and Out. Kevin, BJ, and Ben here with you on this Tuesday, leading up towards Braves and the Red Sox here in just a little bit. But certainly around college football, it's been name, image, likeness, which in the state of Georgia could be enacted coming up on July 1 if the NCAA or federal government doesn't have anything else to say about that. But joining us here, he has been at the forefront in covering name, image, likeness, and all it means to college football from Sports Illustrated. Ross Dellinger joins us here on 3 and Out. Ross, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
We're doing fantastic. First off, how and why, I guess, is Congress getting involved with name, image, likeness?
Well, Congress has been involved now for, I guess, about a year and a half, and they really got involved because of the NCAA. The NCAA, specifically Mark Emmert, asked them to get involved, and that request was triggered by these states that have passed their own NIL laws. So in order to prevent having what college administrators say is a chaotic scene, differing laws, NIL laws at each state, Mark Emmert was hoping, or is hoping, to have a congressional bill to preempt all of those state laws. So December, I think, 2019 was when he made his first appearance at Capitol Hill arguing for that. And now we sit here a year and a half later, and we don't have a congressional bill. We have gotten closer maybe to one, but I don't think we're going to have one anytime real soon.
I was going to say, Ross, what are we looking at on July 1st? I mean, could it be chaotic with various state laws? And I guess you answered it there, but I mean, is there any chance at all that there's something comprehensive in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, very. I don't think there's any chance at all in any kind of comprehensive bill coming out, not just in the next couple of weeks, but in the next couple of months. I don't expect that. I don't think you're going to have full chaos, like a lot of people will say, because while these state laws do differ from one another, and while they all differ from the NCAA's own legislation, which is supposed to be passed next week, they don't differ dramatically. They're small differences, like, for instance, NCAA's legislation prevents or prohibits an athlete from using a school's logo in an endorsement ad or something, while state laws, some state laws, allow that. So it's little things like that. That will be a difference. It's not enough, I don't think, for some full chaos, but there will be advantages and disadvantages. And if the NCAA next week happens to not pass its own legislation, then there will be some real issues, because then you'll have states, schools and states that have not passed an NIL law, their athletes not able at all to do any kind of NIL. But I expect the NCAA to pass its own legislation next week.
And Ross, even sticking with the NCAA, Mark Emmert is a guy, for obviously he had to be up there for these congressional hearings and things of that nature. How much is the NCAA going to kind of be kicking themselves, because they knew this was coming and they obviously were going to take their precious time? But now, do you think that, you say you do expect the NCAA to make its own legislation without this national attention on name and image likeness, without it, having congressional hearings? Do you think the NCAA would have done anything in regards to NIL?
No, and they had plenty of time to do so, and they really dragged their feet with this issue. It's been 2 years or so since California passed, the original state to pass its bill governing NIL. I think it was the spring of 2019 or summer of 2019. So it's been 2 years, and here we are, and the NCAA still hasn't passed NIL legislation. And they had to have seen this coming even before 2 years ago. The fact that California state lawmakers had the initiative to pass their own NIL bill tells you where the topic is. And it's at the forefront, and there's momentum behind it. And the NCAA didn't, and the member schools too, didn't have the foresight. And that's why we are here right now, where you have all of this, quote unquote chaos.
Ross Dellinger, Sports Illustrated, joining us here on 3 and Out. You mentioned the NCAA expected to pass something potentially next week. Does that supersede state laws? What is kind of the weight behind whatever the NCAA pass is expected to be?
No, it will not supersede any state law. And in fact, some states, their NIL law dictates that they must follow the state law and not anything else. And if they don't, they could be slapped with financial penalties. That's the case with Florida's law. They could all of a sudden not receive state funds if they don't follow the NIL law. So states that have passed an NIL law, and there's 6 of them, well, there's 19 total, but 6 that take effect July 1, those states will, the schools in those states will follow by their state law, and everybody else will follow by the NCAA's legislation. And that's how it's going to be for a while until Congress comes up with a bill.
How much consistency, if any, will there be on college campuses in terms of how much, I guess, involvement programs have in terms of either directly helping student athletes or kind of pointing student athletes in the right direction or forming partnerships with PR firms or marketing agencies? Is there any consistency yet or potential consistency on that front?
Yeah, it varies. But most state laws do specifically prohibit schools, and the NCAA's legislation as well says this, from connecting athletes in any way to businesses to profit from NIL. They make it pretty clear. You cannot do that. Schools cannot do that. So there's a fine line there. And schools can't cross it. And sometimes we don't actually know where the line is. Some state laws are a little different. But the NCAA's law is pretty cut and dry. Schools can't have any involvement with matching an athlete in a brand or a company.
And Ross, I know when it comes to NIL, these players potentially can go out there and get representation, which is something that I always was like kind of weary of, them having representation, because you're still dealing with young men and young ladies who don't know anything about negotiations. How crazy could that get? Because when you have an outside entity that has nothing to do with the NCAA, they're going to be doing what's best interest for the player, but they definitely going to be doing what's best interest for them.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's an issue that's ongoing, and it's going to be interesting to watch. Athletes can have agents, and agents can represent them. Even the big brands, these big brand agents, and sometimes they might not have the best, as you mentioned, the best for the athlete at heart. So it's really going to be interesting to watch. And the NCAA allows that. They allow agents, and so does a lot of the state laws. I think all of the state laws pretty much do. So you're going to bring agents into this. But here's the thing, a lot of the college football players and athletes, probably a lot of them won't be able to afford to have an agent. And so I think you'll see a lot of them going to companies like NIL companies to help them find matching brands and businesses.
Illustrated joining us here on 3 and Out. Been at the forefront of name, image, likeness here with college athletes. And Ross, what I'm kind of interested in, because obviously July coming up, and I know the NCAA is trying to pass their own legislations, but given how recruiting works and all of that, we here in the state of Georgia see a lot of athletes go elsewhere. What happens if you're from Georgia going and playing in, say, Michigan? Can you come home in the summer and work under the Georgia rules and name, image, likeness there, but you can't do it in Michigan? How does that work? And has that even been addressed from guys who go to school in one state and hail from another state?
Well, that's a good question. And it's part of this whole uncertainty surrounding everything. That's one of the questions out there. I think what you're probably going to see is the deals, the endorsement deals and things like that probably do have to happen through the state or in the state, but I don't know for sure. And it's questions like that we don't really have answers to yet. And I don't know that we'll get good answers until maybe there are issues that arise that end in lawsuits. A lot of times the courts end up determining those things. And, I think that will be the case here down the line, that we're going to look to the courts potentially to decide some of these laws and rules and what's allowed and what's not.
To that end, Ross, we've heard a lot about fair market value. How is that going to be determined?
Yeah, I was on the phone actually with a conference commissioner earlier today, and he asked me that exact question: who determines fair market value? And the answer is always the same. No matter who you ask, it should be the same, and that's the market. The market determines fair market value, and if anyone else determines fair market value, especially if it's the NCAA, for instance, that's called an antitrust violation. And you're talking about major lawsuits and class action suits. So because you don't have anybody that could determine what fair market value is, you may have some embellishing in some of these deals, basically above board cheating, so to speak.
And Ross, I saw something last year that said that, had name and image likeness been out, last year when Trevor Lawrence was still in college, I think he would have been able to profit right at $331,000 a year. You're not going to see many players of his caliber we've known him since he was 14. Obviously lost. I don't think he ever lost a regular season game. How much of this name and image likeness is going to come back to the fact that a lot of these players, both men and women, live in perception with social media and all the fanfare is going to come back to, look, you thought you was worth this, but the market says you worth that.
Well, that's right. And Trevor would make easy six figures, maybe even close to $1 million. The Trevors and the Joe Burrows, it all, a lot of times it's going to depend on two things. Number one, just how good you are, right? How much name recognition you have, how good of an athlete you are, how big of a star you are, that type of thing. And two, the other thing is, how many social media followers do you have on Twitter or Instagram, whatever? Because you could be a third string right guard and somehow be a great juggler. And you might have 50,000 Instagram followers that like to watch you juggle. And you can make money off of that. You can make profit off of that. You could earn compensation. So it's going to be kind of all over the place, I think, with this. You're going to have people, the top 1% of athletes, make most of the money. But you're going to have those athletes, a lot of women athletes who have a lot of social media followers, you can hit that six-figure mark.
Ross Dellinger, Sports Illustrated. Ross, finally, I was going to kind of just follow up to that because people hear this and they think it's just a free-for-all waterfalls of cash or falling from the sky for everybody out there. I mean, percentage-wise, how many athletes in potential schools do you think actually get affected by name, image, likeness in terms of, I guess, what people would consider significant dollar value?
Yeah, it's tough to. It really is. It's tough to kind of clamp down on that. I'm not sure. I think you're going to have the most athletes get maybe around 4 to 5 figure mark. And a lot of that probably coming from their hometown businesses. I think that's going to be the most popular thing. But like I said, you're going to have that 1% or 0.5% that will make the 6 figures. And there's probably some in between, but there is going to be a big drop off.
Ross Dellinger, Sports Illustrated, our guest here on 3 and Out. He's been at the forefront of name, image, likeness. Nobody better at keeping us up to date with what's going on in regards to that. And again, in our state, in the state of Georgia, July 1, name, image, likeness laws go into effect. Ross, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Ross Dellinger, our guest here on 3 and Out. There's a lot to respond to. I want to take few moments in the next segment to do that. And when we come back, it's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out on this Tuesday. So much to just unravel there with our conversation with Ross Dellinger about name, image, likeness, and again, I don't even kind of know where to begin with some of that stuff. Again, because we are basically 2.5 weeks away from name, image, likeness. As he said, there are 6 states, Georgia being one of them, who have name, image, likeness laws that start on July 1. Now, he said the NCAA is going to pass legislation, but it sounds like that's kind of toothless, if you will, for states that have already got laws. So, hey, great, NCAA, you passed that. That doesn't apply here. But a lot to unpack there, including, BJ, Georgia, one of the most hotly recruited states in the country. Sends kids everywhere. Can you make money in Georgia, but you can't make money in Michigan or Ohio or, Pennsylvania if you go to school there? And then his response to that was, I don't know. Well, that's a pretty big deal. And as he said, if it's going to go down to lawsuits, as we know, there are 2 things that are slower guaranteed than molasses in January. 1 is a lawsuit, and 2 is Congress passing something. And those are 2 things that seem to be kind of impetus into giving some clarity here.
Well, I thought his insight talking about, hey, with regards to some questions, that's going to be something that the courts come up with answers for. I thought that was really remarkable insight, because I don't think that's something, this has been an evolution where for a lot of us, there have been more questions than answers, where it's like you sit around and you're talking with your buddies, or we're on a radio show talking about it, and you're kind of having this stream of consciousness sort of, question by question conversation where it's like, well, what about this? Well, what about that? Well, what about this? And I think, Ross provides some really incredible perspective saying, hey, you have multiple moving parts. You have the NCAA, you have 50 states, you have the federal government with Congress, and then you have, even kind of within those decision-making groups, you still have kind of some uncertainties that may have to be figured out through the court system. So this is going to be, I think this is going to be a long process. I know since this has been a talking point, everybody's been like, oh, July 1st. Yes, that's going to be when this starts. But kind of to what Kevin was talking about, to what Ross was talking about, and just, again, really great information from him, I think you're going to see this define itself over and over again in many ways, many times moving forward.
Yeah, and, when Kevin asked Ross about what if, this state says, okay, you got, Congress has litigation. Does the state have to abide by it, or does what Congress do supersede what the state does? He goes, no. And to me, that's another reason why when you start talking about litigation, that fine print, that understanding every single thing about it, that's what the NCAA is going to do. They're going to make sure they understand every single thing. And I do agree. If I'm from the state of Georgia, which I am, and I go to school, in Florida, and then you got 2 different states going off of 2 different litigations, which one can I do, if any? So everybody talks about, NIL from a standpoint of, we're adults, so we can understand the fine print. 18 to 24, they don't understand this. They hear July 1st, we can make money. No, not necessarily. Number 1, you're going to have to get representation. Number 2, you're going to have to make sure your representation, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not shiesty. Number 3, the NCAA is going to sit back and say, okay, we give you, you don't want an NIL, you got it. Now you got Congress has litigation, states has litigation. You got to figure out what the school saying you can, all these different things. It's going to be a lot of moving parts. It's going to take some time to get it under wraps, because I could be talking about my state, my school, but then think about this. I go to the school in Georgia. I transfer to a school in Florida. Does what happened to me here to go over there? Like it's going to be a lot of different things, because I just think that, what Ross is really saying is, look, the NCAA, that's why they kind of go slow, because they know once they sign it in, they got to abide by it. But then that's not even the state. And then that's not even Congress. So I am looking forward to seeing what's going to happen. But coming from a person that benefited from college all the way, and when I say that, being able to go to the National Football League and being a part of, different things for like endorsements and different, you want to do it because it's extra money, but it's a lot to it. I mean, as quick as you sign these things, hey, if you do this, we take your money away. And that's not to mention I don't know what Georgia said. Most of these schools said they're not going to do it. I went to 75% you got to share or something. I don't think they're going to do it. I think they came out and said they're not going to do it. But you're asking an 18 to 24-year-old to read books this thick and to know it's not going to happen. I still think it's going to be good, but it's going to be real bad before we get to that good part.
Well, I mean, again, I think the couple parts that are concerning is the, cross-state play of this thing. And again, people say, well, Congress may do this. Well, he said months. I mean, so does that mean the 6 states that have it rolling? And I think there's several more that have laws coming in effect September 1. And once they get there, I wouldn't say it's a free-for-all, but it's like you just go until there's a law. I think asking Congress to have something done in 2 weeks, that's not going to happen. So, I mean, and then you talk about what's the marketplace. And ideally, I agree with him. Who sets the market? Well, the market does. The problem is when it comes to high or college athletes at this point, there isn't one. So there is no, hey, this is what the market is. And I think, as he said, you open yourself up to what could be considered above board cheating when you're like, hey, I know because it's not going to be with the national deals, right? The national companies are not going to give a national deal a ridiculous amount of money just because. Like, they wouldn't go to Trevor Lawrence and go, "You're Trevor Lawrence. We're going to give you $20 million just because." They don't care. Be localized deals from school to town, city to city, where these guys are going out trying to profit from it. And that's where you could get into the above board cheating. What's the market? It's whatever that company's willing to pay. Well, are you worth $1,000? But wink, wink, we'll give you 10. I mean, there's not been a kind of established, this is the going rate for a collegiate athlete kind of thing going on out there. So I'm interested to see how quickly that kind of gets established, because I do believe the market should do that, but there isn't one presently. So that's got to get established. It's kind of what's the fair going rate for this, that, or what have you.
Yeah, and I mean, that is a big question, right, Kevin? Like what will the market value be? And Ross was talking about, hey, well, the market's going to determine that. Well, and none of us know this, right? This is all just kind of asking questions, but it's like, okay, does the first NIL contract set the market? Is it the first 10? Is it the first 100? Is it the first 6 months of deals? Is it the first year of deals? Do you average them all together? Like, how do you, like you said, Kevin, how do you construct a market? And Ben, I know you've been a part of that. How do you construct a market when it doesn't exist? And at what point do you raise your hand and go, okay, now we have a market. Now we know what fair market value is. I mean, how in the world does that happen?
The best model to me is going to be every last one of these guys potentially want to go to the NFL. Like, potentially. Like, you can use it as a model. And they'll go, okay, how many guys do you know in the NFL nationally? And they'll go, Patrick Mahomes. Oh, I know him. Lamar Jackson. Oh, I know him. Oh, Drew. Somebody said Drew Lock. Now think about this. Same position, starter. And to me, that's the thing, is social media is going to be how they make their money, because that's what they do. Sign autographs, different things of that nature. But when you start talking about national brands, you know how hard it is to be marketable? Like in the NBA, how many guys got shoes? Their own shoe. What, 9, 10? I mean, I'm just saying, as great as Trae Young is, right? He don't have his own shoe. Luka don't have his own shoe. Zion does. Ja Morant does. I just think that when you start, that to me is going to be the harsh reality. The harsh reality of it is everybody thinks they're marketable. Everybody. And when you start thinking what the perception is they do, what the harsh reality is going to be is they're going to be saying, all right, man, we willing to give you $500, $250. Because like you said, Kevin, if me and you and BJ got, 3 and Out LLC, whatever, you got our own company. And I go, hey, man, I know this kid from, so-and-so county. We want to give him $20,000. The first thing you're going to say is, for what? Like, it's even if you can give it to him, it's almost like, are we going to be making this? I don't know. And to me, that's what I look at it as. That's why I go back to the model that what everybody gets, the endorsement deals like gift cards and things of that nature. Look, when I was in college, we used to go to the movies. Them little $3 they used to give us, whatever, $10. I used to love it. Give me some Reese's Pieces, give me some pop. I'm good. I'm telling y'all, it's not about the big dollars.
Well, no, I mean, and that's fine. I don't think it's going to be big dollars for everybody. I think there is the perception that it's going to be just a windfall, free for all, wild, wild west. I just think there's a lot of uncertainty out there as to what the market is. Could you overpay just because, hey, I'm a Alabama fan, wink, wink, and I got a thing I want one of your players to do, and have a personal appearance at this place or that, or I want him to promote a camp that's going on. I'm going to have him come in and coach a camp, wink, wink, and he's going to be there, and we're going to pay him 10 times the going rate, what we'd pay some other people. And I just wonder if that's where you get into the above board cheating, because again, it's not illegal to overpay somebody, right? I mean, it's not. If you go in, it's like, man, I can't believe so-and-so. I mean, we see that in the NFL all the time, right? I mean, hey, I can't believe they gave him $20 million. It's not illegal to do that. So how do you kind of regulate that? And again, I will be interested to see come July 1, because if what Ross said is true and the NCAA is going to pass their own deal, but the states who have laws on the books supersede that, well, come July 1, you're going to have 6 states where guys are able to go out and make it happen. And BJ, Ben, we've already been talking with folks, around who said, look, yeah, I know college athletes who already have things set. Now they're not like, mega $100,000, but they already have things set to go in action on July 1. And these are just, student athletes already. July 1, it's going to happen. So those 6 states obviously have an advantage. How nothing governmental moves quickly. So to say, well, these other states will just start catching up, I just don't think it could be months of just, man, that guy over there gets it. And I got to wait till 2023 in California but I got to wait till March. Like, it's going to be very interesting to see how this unfolds. And potentially, I think rampant is a bad word, because I don't mean it like it's something illegitimate going on, but just how widespread just athlete deals in general are. And is this going to end up being much ado about nothing, where it's like, oh, it's just going to be Wild West? Well, it's really, as Ben has said, it's going to be about 9 to 10 football players on the whole, maybe a basketball player or two, a couple of softball players, a baseball player. And outside of that, you better have social media going, or it probably isn't going to be a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be more than that, and I just don't know what's on the horizon from a representation standpoint, because Ben, you've talked about that, right? The importance of representation, and obviously in the National Football League, you had an agent who did a lot of things for you. I mean, Ross was saying that athletes can have agents, but you also have to have a kind of a separation between the school pointing you in the direction of things and setting up clients and all like that, with maybe an agent. I mean, how is all that going to work? I mean, Ben, is an agent going to represent a student athlete for just a flat fee of whatever the marketing deal is? Like, hey, if you get $1,000, I get $100. I mean, how is all that going to work?
To me, if I'm an agent, it has to be worth my time. The money is not going to be worth it. It has to be worth my time. I mean, I go back to when I got my agent. I mean, Joe Sequel told me flat out, if you weren't going to be a top draft pick, I wouldn't be here. Like, he's telling me the truth. And agents make big time money, like big time money. So if I'm an agent, I'm saying to myself, this is what an agent's really going to do. I want exclusivity to this school. So if I'm going to be, for it to make sense, I need to represent the football players, right? Because an agent is, the most an agent can get is 3%. That's the most they can get. People like, well, 3%. Well, yeah, well, you just signed for $30 million. That's a lot of money, but they get 3% on everything they help you negotiate. So it's probably going to be better to go with a name and image like this company, because they can help, because they're going to be willing to defer. They're going to be getting their whatever when they negotiate something for you. They're going to make sure they get they money through their services back from it. Because if I'm an agent that's used to making big time money, and I'm not going to be going back and forth CCing emails for $1,000, that's not worth an agent's time. It's just not. I just think that it's going to be a reality check, because like I said, when I was in college, yeah, I thought I was the truth, and then you get to college and you see the truth, right? And then you think, so it's going to be that. And like I said, Kevin and BJ, once again, $1,000 is $1,000, right? $1,000 to you and me, that's some good money. What you think is going to be to a 17-year-old? You can give me what? I'm telling y'all, it don't have to be a lot of money. We are talking about people that don't have any money. And this is the thing. What are they going to do with 100K? What would the average person that don't make a lot of money do with 100,000? That's all I'm saying. You don't want to start that stuff. The reason why most people in the NFL end up broke because they made millions. You were broke yesterday. Now you got me. What are they going to do? They're going to spend it. So to me, $100 here, a couple of $100 there, $1,000 here. Trust me, they're going to be kids in candy stores like you've never seen in your life because it's going to be, I'm benefiting. You don't get to decide the benefit. Everybody think they're worth a meal until you got to go to the negotiating table. You walk away with, 20K.
And again, you're talking about 15 days, and the state of Georgia will have NIL laws rocking and rolling on the books. We've got more to come here on 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Braves and Red Sox coming up a little bit later tonight. And Alex Anthopoulos in The Athletic did an interview, and he said that Huascar Ynoa, Travis d'Arnaud, and Mike Soroka could be back in August. And I know, BJ, you love that word could in there, but could be back in August. If that is true, that obviously would be huge news for the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just being honest. Look, we're obviously wishing all those guys the best, Mike the best. You know, it's been kind of hard to get a feel for what's going on with Mike Soroka. Remember, back in the preseason, right? The thought was maybe he'll be ready by week 4 or 5 of the regular season, and then it kind of suddenly switched to, well, he's probably not going to pitch this year. And with injured guys, I know you never know. But Kevin, I mean, would it be unfair if my response is I'm not counting on anything from Mike Soroka this year? Or this season, I should say. This season?
I'm not. I mean, I don't get the daily medical report, but I mean, look, you're coming back from an Achilles injury, and you've already tried to come back once and had to shut it down. Now, maybe the rehab's going well, but I mean, I guess at this point, I'm kind of like, I'll believe it when I see it. I guess I shouldn't be that way, but I mean, BJ, we've been around this block before with injuries, where it's like, oh, it's coming back. Oh, it has a setback, and then you just have no idea, and you kind of have to start all over. So I'm gonna believe it when I see it with Mike Soroka. I think the Braves could certainly use him, but I mean, at this point, I'm not gonna get my hopes up that he's gonna come back and contribute this season.
Oh, Alex Anthopoulos been on Twitter. So that's what it sounds like, BJ. That public pressure, right? It happened, and I think too. He's saying August now. I mean, when it comes to Mike Soroka, if he doesn't play, it's fine. I mean, when you talk about Travis d'Arnaud, that would be a great addition. Huascar Ynoa is the one I hope to come back, strictly because his situation, let's face it, it's a little bit different. I mean, frustration will get the best of us. I mean, but Kevin, I'm just saying, the fact he said they'll be back in August is that Alex Anthopoulos kind of calling this shot? Like, look, man, we go. I think we're gonna rally and probably win this NL East. I'm just saying, is that a little arrogance in there?
I think right now that's the olive branch of hope, is what that is. You dangle that out there and say, hey, these guys could be coming back, and I think if you get those guys back, that's a big difference. BJ, we talked a lot about the pitching staff. You get Huascar Ynoa back, that's a big help. You get Mike Soroka back, that's a big help. You get those two back, guess who's not in the rotation probably at that point? Your guy, Drew Smiley. He's probably not there. And what a difference that could make. So I'm not getting my hopes up about Mike Soroka, but it would be huge if he come back. I think Huascar Ynoa was on pace to come back about that time anyways from his broken hand. And Travis d'Arnaud, I think if he's going to be of use to you in 2021, he needs to come back in late August, maybe early September. Otherwise, you're playing so much catch up that are you going to throw Travis d'Arnaud in there potentially in a playoff race, having not played for 4 months? That's a tough thing to do. So I think Alex Anthopoulos trying to throw out the olive branch of hope there for the Braves, as they need some good news, and we'll see if they can get some tonight against the Boston Red Sox in a 2-game series. But again, I think right now, if you're the Braves, you got to figure out how to tread water with what you got and try to figure out how to become more consistent with what you got right now on the roster.
I think it would be a disappointment. I mean, if he's not back by late July, early August, I mean, especially given kind of what was initially reported when the injury occurred, and Ynoa was great. I mean, if Ynoa would have maintained that pace, he would be in the All-Star game. I mean, he's been Atlanta's best pitcher. I mean, best starting pitcher, maybe alternating with Ian Anderson at times, but it is interesting to kind of think about where you are with what you have, because Kevin, I wanted to get your thoughts on this. I said yesterday, I do think Drew Smiley and certainly Max Fried and certainly Charlie Morton will kind of improve their ERA and settle in a little bit. I look at a guy like Tucker Davidson, who's been fantastic, and he goes tonight. But is it realistic to ask Tucker Davidson, hey, man, you got to maintain a 1.53 ERA the rest of the year? I mean, that's what it is right now. And again, I love what I've seen. But if you're being honest, you're probably expecting a little bit of a market correction there at some point, and for him not to have a 1.5 ERA. So you're going to need some guys to step up and hopefully, in the case of Ynoa, come back.
Well, hold on, BJ. You always saying is that an expect? Yes. That doesn't mean that. Listen, expectation doesn't mean you're gonna get it. That's the only thing that leads to disappointment, right? Expectation. But look, we breezed. Well, we don't, but we act as if everything his Braves team haven't had to overcome. If I'm thinking that Mike Soroka gonna be here for the start, for maybe like 2 months into the season, and he's not. Watch Cardinova punching stuff. He's gone. Travis Darno, he's gone. So guys like Tucker Davis and Ian Anderson, those guys gonna have to play better. Oh, and then there's that Marcell Ozuna guy who you expected him to be here, and yet they still in the thick of it. That's got to mean something. Because I'm not saying that the Braves don't, are the only team that got to overcome, off the field stuff or injuries, but these are significant pieces that they're missing, and they still in the thick of things. So I think that Alex Anthopoulos is kind of doing that. Look, let me give these fans olive branch. But this is the thing. This is crazy part, though, Kevin. We throw out that could be. All we hear is they'll be back in August. That's what we really hearing. Forget that could be stuff. He said that Darno and those guys will be back in August. They're probably not going to be, but I can appreciate that.
We'll see what the Braves can do tonight against the Red Sox. We'll come back, get you ready for Braves Red Sox next. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. If you missed any portion of the show, ESPNCoastal.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or go to our YouTube page. You get a podcasted version of the show each and every day. Coming up tomorrow on the show, Drew DeArmond, Tider Insider, going to join us. We'll talk some college football with him. And Jared Binko, Georgia Southern Athletic Director, will join us. Certainly, his plate is full with potential 12-team playoff on the horizon, name, image, likeness coming in this state in 2 weeks. So a number of issues, not to mention, actual sports are going to be played in about a month and a half when fall practice starts back up. So a lot to get to with Jared Binko coming up tomorrow on the program. Look forward to that conversation here on 3 and Out. Braves and Red Sox coming up 6:05. We'll have coverage tonight, BJ.
Let's get some runs early. I mean, and I understand, over the last couple of weeks, the Braves have been pretty good at, battling back and at least getting close. How about a 4, 5, 6, 7 run lead early on? And let's go from there. But no, looking forward to chatting with Jared Binko tomorrow. Always enjoy his perspective. But let's get some runs. Let's get some runs.
I was hosting the Back Nine Boys Golf Show. Joining us, McLean Baxley, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, joined us in hour 2, and Chris Hummer, 247 Sports, joined us back in hour number 1, talking college football. Braves and Red Sox coming up in about 8 minutes. See you soon.